Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
These shows are brought to you by the Open to Hope Foundation, whose mission it is to help find hope after loss, and by the Compassionate Friends. Well, Heidi, we've got a great show today because we're going to be talking about giving a voice to grief and recovery, and that's part of our mission at Open to Hope. And we've got a couple who have made a fabulous film that is giving wonderful voices to grief and recovery, and I'm very excited about it. And they're a couple, and they've traveled all over the United States to interview people, and they're still married.
Yes, you guys really have interviewed some of the leaders in the fields, and we are going to show a clip in a little bit. But it's a great movie. I've seen it. It's a great film, and it's a great film of not only survival but of finding hope after loss, and of thriving, and not just surviving. So I love that piece of it. Like you said, Mom, that is our mission today. So let me formally introduce them. There's Arnie and Kathy Sparnins, and they are from Colorado, and they both are no strangers to grief and loss.
I know, they go deep, and that's one reason this film is good, because they're not afraid to go deep, because they've had losses themselves.
They've had multiple losses. Arnie has lost 2 siblings, Alana at 22 by suicide, and Martin, who was only 4 days old when he died.
And he died before you were born, which I think is really important too, because you have somebody in the film that talks about a new baby who died at 4 days, and your mother's baby died at 4 days, and you were telling us that it's brought things around for you. So that's pretty interesting also.
Absolutely, and parents parent differently after they've had a loss, the death of a child. So because, you know, Martin died, Arnie, your parents parented you differently. So it's an interesting thing to think about. How would they have been different? And then Kathy is like you said, they're spouses. Is the executive producer, and she had a sibling die, Christine, at 15, in a car accident, and both of her parents died young. Her dad was 58 when there was an accidental overdose, and her mother died at 67 of cancer. Right. So they were both very young. And she's also a spiritual advisor, which we've said was very interesting. And again, the name of the show is Voices of Grief, Honoring the Sacred Journey. That is the name of the film.
Yeah, let's talk, before we show a little clip from it, let's talk about who we're going to see, because we're going to see some of the people who've written books and give talks, and people that Heidi and I know that I think the first one is David Kessler, isn't it? Yeah, talk a little bit about David.
David is just so perfect. I think he's really been working in this field long enough and has had some of his own losses as well.
His son died by suicide in the last couple of years. So
that's what I had understood.
He's deep and
he is. He has great depth to him, and he has the ability to, I think, normalize something that, you know, some of the pain we're in, and helps normalize even the process. Part of what he talks about in the film is, you know, if you're around people who don't know how to support you, then figure out who else you can go to. You know, you can't buy milk in a hardware store in his language. It's cute. Then we'll see Thomas Lynch, who is an amazing poet, and he's also a funeral director in Michigan. Then Dr. Alan Wolfelt, who's Marianne Williamson, and some of the other people that are not in the clip, but Rabbi Harold Kushner is really...
Wow, he's still around when bad things happen to good people.
I know, I love that book. I discovered it in my 20s, and he was one of the first people I wanted to call.
Arnie, who were some of your favorites as a guy?
Well, I mean, having the opportunity to meet Rabbi Harold Kushner, he was just so articulate and eloquent to his stories, and everybody has their own underlying loss story, and so he just, he went through a lot of, just in having that time together with him, the trauma with his son and his son's death.
He had that weird disease where you get older.
Right.
Very fast,
Right.
Yeah.
It's too many syllables for me to pronounce, so I'm not going to.
And that way he wrote his book.
I wouldn't do the justice. And having read his book before too, but then to hear him in an interview, because we're not filmmakers, and so we always, would find settings to shoot the films, best we could, and we probably weren't the best location scouters, and so we always had to deal with background noise or something. But with Rabbi Kushner, he'd be like 5 minutes into an answer, and all of a sudden there'd be some loud noises, and then he'd say, "Okay, I'll take it." And he'd just reset himself, play the 5 minutes back again, and just be able to continue on without any issues. And so, just to see how deeply embedded that thinking process is with him to be that articulate. He was very impressive, and they were so kind too. I mean, so we had the good fortune to actually interact with these people. I mean, obviously very grateful that they agreed right away to the project, but then to spend time with them is a gift to us. And
I love that. Well, let's see a clip, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it.
You can't heal what you don't allow yourself to feel. Feeling it is beginning to heal. That's how grief works.
I was so taken with this idea in life that there's a right way to do things and to excel and to be perfect that I tried to grieve well. And I put a tremendous pressure on myself. I can do this well. I'll grieve better than anybody has ever grieved.
The fact that I am grieving when it is time to grieve does not make me less perfect.
A study recently showed 71% of Americans don't even know their neighbors. So we don't have people to story with even if we want to when somebody dies.
They are becoming more virtual communities in the way we are more connected to our Facebook friends maybe than to the fella on the next corner.
Great film. It looks wonderful. And I guess we can say it now and at the end. How do people get a hold of it?
Just contact us, go online to our website. We have DVDs available, plus educational kits for
And what's your website?
nonprofits. It's www.voicesofgrief.org.
Okay, so you can go on there, and you guys will go speak. And do you speak with her, or you just?
I attend. I help work the crowd. Do the logistics. She goes up in the front. So I'm not used to being sitting on the stage. Yeah.
How did you both even have the idea of making this film? I mean, what?
Well, I have been working in as an educational person in hospice for about the last 15 years, and oftentimes, I coming from my own losses and then being a group facilitator in hospice, I would really be very present to the pain I see in people. And I look at that as part of what our culture really, no one teaches us how to be present to somebody in grief. And so I think I see oftentimes so many people who are in the midst of terrible heartbreak, and then people out there in the community want to tell them to hurry up, get over it, move on, stiff upper lip. And we used to see death more often back in the day. We all lived usually in the same neighborhood. Now we're all scattered.
Well, people used to wear banners,
Right. Wear black.
and also the widows. What did they call the widows' clothes? They called them. I don't remember. When you wore black, I don't remember what they called them. But I remember going to Europe when I was younger, and I think still in the Catholic countries there, they will wear black.
Right.
And
For about
I
a
think
year.
that's one unfortunate thing that we've gotten away from showing. When Heidi's brother died, his whole team wore the black armbands. Do you remember that?
They still do things like that
For
in
the
sports.
season. So they're still doing it in the sports world?
Yeah.
Well, isn't it interesting, too? I talked with a minister who's written lots of books, and one of the things he's written on is the fact that Christians have all these rituals that we're no longer using.
And a lot of people are. I was reading in the New York Times today that a lot of people aren't going to church anymore, and so that whole connect with that. One of the things that I've been interested in, I don't know if anyone talked about it, is the fact that I see my younger nephews and nieces and people not even wanting to see the body at all.
Right. Oftentimes, cremation has taken over. As I've heard the quotes that about 50% of people bury and 50% of people burn. But what Thomas Lynch says about that, and he's the one that's a poet and an undertaker and has written several books, he's a lovely man, and he said, you know, it doesn't matter which way, whether you bury or burn, but he goes, go to the burning.
I like that.
Well,
You
and
know.
they do that in places like India.
Exactly.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
we were there and watching them all take the body down, and
Except remember, the women don't get to go.
they don't. It was all
It's
the men.
only the men.
It was the men.
Which is kind of interesting because I think as a guy in the United States, I don't know if I think guys get less involved. In India, they cause you to be involved. You have to
to be.
go do the
Yeah.
ceremony.
And we're involved. I mean, it's my heritage. My parents both came from the country Latvia, and so when we would have funeral services and burials, we all participated. So you don't leave a casket sitting there, at the cemetery and walk away. Everybody grabs a shovel and fills the entire grave.
Oh,
I
I
love
love that
that.
because you wanted to do that, Scott.
That
You wouldn't
is-
leave till they did it.
You
that
have to
is
fight
such,
for that. The place,
That is so interesting that you're saying you had to fight for it, because when my brother died, everybody left. And his casket was above ground, and I said, no, I'm not leaving until he's been buried. I'm not going to just leave him out here, and so I just stayed there.
And we stayed there in the car and
Yes.
watched you.
And they stayed there in the car until someone came and lowered the
And we told them
coffin.
that you weren't going to leave, and so they went out. Because usually what they do is they wait till everybody leaves and then they do it.
Yes.
But I love that. Did they have any other rituals besides that?
We celebrate like every year, like similar to the Day of the Dead with in Spanish tradition. In Mexico, we also celebrate cemetery holidays, and so we hold services at the cemetery, to remember all those that from all the years, but also from the most recently. Then go visit the people that died in the past year, and that cemetery, like in Latvia too, when they have the cemetery holiday. It's a picnic day, so
Yes.
people bring
I love that.
they bring their chairs, they bring their spread out a nice little buffet food style on the tablecloth, and they just honor the people that have walked before you. And
Well, you know who does that well is the military.
Yes.
My mom and I are on the advisory board for TAPS, and Arlington Cemetery, people do the same thing. You see people picnicking there, and you see kids playing there, and they really go and honor people, because in a lot of cemeteries in the United States, they're empty a lot of times
Yes.
for most of the year.
Well, unfortunately, Memorial Day, when I'm from a small town and everybody went up to the cemetery on Memorial Day, and you walked around and talked to everybody. We didn't picnic, but we were all there. The whole town was there, and everybody. I remember my mother used to get upset if it was a cold spring and the flowers weren't out, so she could put them on the grave. And I used to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and put flags in all the military graves with my mother.
I'm
Sweet.
wondering if all
Yeah.
that happens now. The same level of, interest in being in the cemetery.
I don't think so. But one of the problems is people don't live by each other.
if you're
That's
part of
right.
the community,
Plus,
yeah,
what do people do now on Memorial Day? They go boating,
Right.
It's a holiday.
Well, and like was said in the movie, I think Thomas Lynch said it in your movie, we are more connected online now than we are to our neighbors.
Right.
and you don't know your neighbors. You didn't know Fred down the street that
Yes.
died, or Mary, or
Right.
so you're not going there and doing that. Did anybody in there have any advice for remembering on the film?
There was a lot of encouragement, really, from each person to figure out a way, what is your ritual? How
Okay.
are you going to remember? And what I love, and Dr. Wolfelt and Thomas Lynch were big ones on that around, we need to remember our dead. They lived so long. They've given us all these gifts. We had a big party when they were born. What happens now when that precious person dies? And some people will just say, well, just throw me in the backyard. I don't want anyone to do anything. It's like, no, this is
Yeah,
for the living.
I always say, my husband will say something to me, well, when I die, and I'm like, well, we'll probably do what we want to do because
You're not
it's kind of for the living that you have those
Exactly.
kinds of rituals. Now, I wonder, are you going to have a picnic next Memorial Day?
Well, the Latvian Memorial Day is actually, it started cold. And I grew up in Minnesota, so it's pretty nasty out in the cemetery, but people still get out there and do that. But I think, the power of ritual was something that became so clear in just, and not being a professional in the field like Kathy is, but just being a novice. I do Stephen ministry, so I do meet with people one-on-one in terms of a different setting of support, which for me was like a great change, because coming from a high-tech industry where problem solving was the skill that you needed to going to a world where it's like, don't solve anything, just be there.
Just be a companion.
Very powerful change. But the rituals were the consistent theme, everywhere. I mean, in terms of the people we talk to, whether it's, dealing with Nicer and the memorial walls and different things that they would do, that were born of the Puerto Rican traditions, that worked their way into New York, or, simple little ceremony.
Let's mention Nicer, because I think you've got a picture of Nicer here where he has decorated a subway car. Tell him a little. Well, either tell him a little bit about Nicer. Do you want to?
Well, Nicer is part of a bigger group called Tat's Crew, and he has a history and grew up here in New York. And he and his group of friends used to be graffiti artists, and then as they evolved and grew more and more, they had a mentor from. Actually, I think.
Now, did you say his son died?
His son was killed.
His son Blue.
Was shot, right?
Yep.
Right.
He was 22 years old.
Yeah.
In a drive-by shooting.
Yeah.
So, so Nicer's history is he grew up doing some graffiti, but as he matured and he still had the same group and circle of friends, they have become rather famous now for.
And we
doing
have
murals.
Yeah, we have some of those murals on the screen right now. So, yeah. So, what did you learn from Nicer? What was your thought from them? You were talking about rituals.
Well, it goes back to community, because we've got exposed to, we filmed him on location. He made sure that his origins are the South Bronx, so they make sure they keep their studio there, in the South Bronx. But it's really a youth mentoring organization, and they bring in people, develop their skills, but it develops them in a positive way with people, with people around them, and in some difficult situations, and community is what we saw when we went out, because we went on tour then and went to these different locations, and at some of these locations of these billboards, there were people gathered there because that was their meeting spot where they would gather and play cards or play their different games, but it became the settings of where people were, and just that community of remembrance, and so in a large city, you got a completely different view of. You didn't see a large city, but you saw small communities of people.
Little small communities. Isn't that sweet? And I think the more ethnic the culture, the more ritual is important. And so I love that that's something that we can take and learn from some of our own history. I'd say now the Jewish tradition and the Catholic tradition still have lots of ceremony, and it's something good.
I know the Jews. Did you do they put the rock on the tombstone?
Yeah.
Right, and they drape mirrors, and they wear a black armband.
And don't they put, after a year, don't they put a black cloth over the tombstone and bring it off? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure the whole ritual. So, what did you take from the film, as far as from a religious point of view? Did you feel some spirituality when you talked to these families, or?
It was wonderful. I'm thinking of the same mother that lost her 4-day-old son. When she found out they were going to go visit Rabbi Harold Kushner, and she's the one that in the film questions about how could God do this, and so she wanted to ask a list of specific questions to Rabbi Kushner on and
how in the world could this happen? everyone that tells their story in my film are people that have all been through my grief group. And so these folks knew when we were doing some of the filming. So I took her questions to Rabbi Kushner.
Oh my gosh.
Right. And so he actually answered all of her questions. And so when I came back, I was able to say, this is what the Rabbi just said. So, and she went through a real spiritual struggle. She was someone who, she attends a church, but she was really mad at God. And
okay, so what did Rabbi Kushner say about being mad at God?
Well, my memory is, it's like, he goes, God is suffering in this with you. And so it's not that God caused anything to happen.
Yeah.
And he's, he would tell anyone who's telling you about the little angel in heaven that's now there, he goes, I wouldn't want any part of a religious tradition that would do such a thing.
Yeah.
So he was really quite sweet about saying, God is with you in the suffering and is not one.
And that's where, when people ask, because it says it applies to death or applies to, natural disasters, like when people look at, go to, say, Katrina, and people say, where is God? And it's like, well, look at the people responding. That's where God is.
I like that.
That's sweet. That's sweet.
But I got to tell you, because I love this, his fundamental tenet on two things of saying why things happen then still is because, when God created, in his religious tradition, God created the earth, he left man, with free will and Mother Nature. And you can't control those things, that everything's not deterministic in terms of what happens there, because there is, because without free will and Mother Nature, this world would be entirely different and it wouldn't be, the positive things that it is.
Yeah, that's sweet. I like that. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question. How do we get guys to be more involved, and do they need to be? I mean, we know in the grief, like Compassionate Friends, there are more women. Is it okay? Is the energy okay just the way it is? Or do you think that guys are really
I think guys need to be
suffering?
involved in everything. I mentioned Stephen ministry, and it's always probably a 10-to-1 ratio in terms of finding women to serve in that volunteer role versus finding men. So it's a safe space. It's a safe space. It's a good space. It's a very masculine space.
What is it? Stephen's ministry?
Stephen ministry, yeah.
And tell us what that is.
What is that?
It's basically a companioning process for people that are going through struggles, and the basic thing you do is show up.
And is it mainly men?
Be there and no, that's not mainly men. That's mainly both men and women.
But you have men who are willing to do it.
You have men that are willing to do it, but you don't get as many men. So men need to be everywhere. I mean, I think without question, men need to be everywhere. One of the people interviewed in the film is a former fighter pilot.
Oh, wow.
And he, Kathy can tell you about his initial response, because he came from one of Kathy's grief groups initially, and Kathy calls everybody with the hospice to get him into group. And
so I get the list of people.
Oh, you call him. I get how we do it.
Yeah. So I get this list from hospice who's eligible. So I call and just wanted to say this is a personal invitation to our grief group, and he goes, I'll come once. He said, I'm a fighter pilot, and, this isn't the kind of stuff for me.
Fighter pilots don't do this.
Right.
So what I love about him is that he came to the group and he sort of never left, because he always is outnumbered, but I actually let him start co-leading with me because I wanted a man as a mentor for some of the guys that would come in there. And he changed. He was an introvert. He said, well, my wife was the one that was the extrovert and did all the planning, but he was so passionate about what he got from that group in terms of giving people permission to feel what they feel and to show the importance of it, that he started coming to every group after that.
I love it. So, get somebody to get your guy
And also
come
to
to group.
empower him and empower
Empower
him
him.
because he's a fighter pilot.
Right.
And
Yeah.
have him lead the group with you, which was great.
Well,
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
often men are more action-oriented in
Yes.
their grief. I love the beautiful story that I think it was a book by, I think, Earl Grolman, but he talked about a gentleman, two brothers building a home together, and the one brother died in the midst of the building. And so the brother that was left, he decided to finish the house in his brother's name. And everyone said, "Oh, he's not grieving, he's not crying. I don't see any emotion." But what he was doing with the continuation of the building was that he was giving action to his mourning was outward.
We had a man on our show whose wife was killed, and his friends came and helped him remodel his house. So
Well,
tell
and
us,
I think that's one of the ways you can get men to come is to say to them, could you come and help me set up the chairs and set up the room and
who
give
was
them
it?
a job?
Who
Right.
was it, Heidi? Someone told us also that people came and played ping pong with him. Do you remember
Yes.
that? He made him play ping pong with him
Oh.
every night, he tells his friends.
Yes.
So, well, tell
great.
us how we can get your film again and what's your hope and dream for it, both of you.
Yeah, so our hope and dream is to get the film out there to be shown in community. It's, I think it's a lovely thing if somebody buys it just to watch it at home, but it's also a film to bring people together in your living room or bring them together in your church or bring them together in hospice or a funeral home even. So they can go online. It's www.voicesofgrief.org. And I watch that site closely, and as people even buy things, if they ask for help in how to set up a community screening, I'll actually help them do it.
Great. Well, thank you guys for being on the show, and thanks for all the wonderful work that you've
Thank
done
you.
and for being you.
Well,
Absolutely. Thank you for this phenomenal film.
thank you.
And for bringing awareness to everybody that there is hope after loss and that they're not alone.
Right.
And we want to thank everybody for watching this show today, and we hope you'll tell your friends about Open to Hope. And we also want to tell you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
The loss of a loved one can leave you feeling depressed, angry, alone, lost. But you don't have to face this journey on your own. Open to Hope is a free community for anyone who has experienced loss. Find support. Find help. Find hope. Give grief a voice at opentohope.com.